Hello, everyone. My name's Hank Settler,
And I'm Casey McBride.
I'm Leela Willow.
and we're here with a fun episode of Stir Crazy Shamans. So, what happens when you take three shamans and put them on a live stream together? We're about to find out.
I was going to say, we'll find out.
Today we have a special guest. Leela is in the current shaman apprenticeship program that we're doing virtually with people that are all over the country, from California to Connecticut. And she was really inspired to have a conversation around the topic of death and renewal. And that's why we're here today, bringing you that. And it's just a perfect time as we start to go from fall into winter to bring this up and how we can really use this time as a great time of transformation and healing.
We really are entering the season of death and regeneration. We've been in it for a little while.
Yeah, definitely. So where do we? Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that's something that's I've the longer I practice, like really the aspect of connection with Mother Nature, like that aspect of shamanism and falling in tune with the energies of the nature spirits and the rhythms of nature, the more I realize that as like the seasons change, that really has such a huge impact on us as well. And I do sort of find myself around this time of year wanting to kind of really go inward and look at, what is it that I really need to be holding on to in my life? What can I let go of at this time? And but I feel like in this space, it's almost more of it's not quite the really like fully letting go of things portion for me. At this time of the year, I just really want to kind of like settle and just take time to just be with all that was throughout the more active parts of the year. But I definitely noticed that this kind of theme of like death and renewal around like the middle of winter and all of that.
Right. Well, then we also have a lunar eclipse coming up, and we have the winter solstice coming up, which is oftentimes the time where you're planting new seeds to come to fruition throughout the next year. So it's like a whole, when you really look at it, it's like the death of things you don't want, the beingness of who you are, and what do I want to plant now that as the year progresses and we move forward are going to have fruits that come to fruition to add to your life and shift, more possibilities to you, whatever you're looking to bring into your life. It's all connected like that.
Yeah, that's kind of like the magician in the tarot. The magician says, put everything out on the table. What's all here available? Now what are you going to create? And with the wisdom of nature, I spent a lot of time studying the magic and healing of trees, and a lot of the times the trees go through their own transformation at this time, the wisdom to let go and, to go into that dark time. I was actually reading about the shadow self this morning from one of the Mayan books. It talks about, the value of going into the shadow. There's a value of going there, into the deep where no light is, because when you come out of it, you can come back with a little bit more knowingness of yourself.
That's something I've started to see more and more value in for a long time. Actually, there was a portion of my spiritual work. There were like a couple of years where all I did was no other spiritual practice other than to keep my attention on unmanifested consciousness, or like on just pure light being. And it was very beautiful to do that. But like then I really, when the darkness that was present around me or within me would come up, I would just kind of want to like just blast it with light and like not want to deal with it. And especially this year, I have been shown more and more the value of actually going into the darker aspects of the self and reality. And if nothing else, like this one teacher that I really like, Muji, said, is he equated, someone asked him, hey, as someone who's so present, he's a teacher and he teaches about, enlightenment and being present in the now and as remaining as the one consciousness. He asked, so like, where is the place for these darker, heavier emotions. And he said it doesn't matter how aware, awake, or wise you are. It's never going to be the case that the darker emotions and experiences are completely unvaluable. In fact, if nothing else, you can see them as like being something that tastes very bitter. Right. And if you're just completely eating sweet stuff all the time, it's great and you might enjoy it. But at the same time, then you start to like lose the sensitivity and you're not able to fully appreciate the sweet. And then if you eat something bitter or have these darker emotional experiences, then when you go back to something sweet, it just tastes infinitely sweeter. And so that you can really truly appreciate the sweet or the later experiences for what they are so much more when you have that kind of comparison between that and the darkness that you have experienced.
There's a quote from Neil Donald Walsh: in the absence of that which you are not, that which you are is not. That kind of encapsulates what you're talking about with having the opposite of one thing to really appreciate the other. I'm sorry, Will, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
When you're removed from the goodness and then you come back to it, it's always so much more good.
Yeah.
I can relate to that. I know it's been said a lot, but this year, for everybody in the world, I feel like it's been, the earth and universe telling everybody to just slow down. And it really is a year for collective.
I have to go in the living room. The delay is driving me nuts. I'm sorry.
It's a mysterious ghost person in the background.
No, that's Deanna.
I was relating a lot to what you were saying, Casey, and it made me think a lot about the Shiva fire. As I've been through painful and suffering experiences myself, for me, I'm kind of like reckless. I'm kind of like, throw it all in the Shiva fire, set me on fire so I can be reborn. And fearlessly going into that fire and having everything just burned up so that it can be renewed.
Now, are you saying really Siva or Shiva? I just want to make sure I had it correct before I throw it up there. Was it SH or SI?
Shiva. Well, Shiva can be spelled with an H or not, I believe.
Okay, so this would be correct. The Siva fire or Shiva fire. Okay, cool. I'm not the best with grammar and spelling, so I wanted to make sure I had it somewhat correct. And could you talk a little bit about that? Because I know in our talking points of things we were going to kind of cover, this is one of the things you mentioned. And Shiva for me has been, I think you were at one of the concerts I was doing where I started doing like a Brahmin chant, and I've never studied anything like that. And I started working with that Shiva energy a lot, that energy of transformation. Could you speak a little bit about the origins of that and exactly what that Shiva fire is?
Yeah, so Shiva is a deity from Hinduism. As far as I know, he dances around the world and he does this dance and he's setting everything on fire. And he's burning away all of the impurities of the world to make room for new life. But Shiva doesn't come without his counterpart. His wife, I believe that Shiva's wife is Parvati. So Shiva he burns everything up and sets it all on fire, and then Parvati kind of follows behind him and plants the seeds for the new life. And, what goes along with that to me is light can't be visible without the dark. Just like if you're eating too much sugar, like you said, you can't taste the other flavors.
Oh, yeah, very true.
Sometimes we'll be in experiences in our life that force us to jump into the fires of transmutation. But, from an uncomfortable position that we're in, we can thrive. When you're in that uncomfortable position and everything's dark, you're kind of forced to have a new perspective.
Yep. This brings up a really cool example that our teacher brings up a lot. And it's really interesting. It's in the kind of the dynamics of how, in truth, even the darkness is light. There is only ever truly, like, everything emanates from the same source. So it's all the same energy, just given different density and form. And the one example he gives is of the butterfly and the energy that transforms the butterfly after it crystallizes itself, puts itself in that chrysalis, and the energy that liquefies it and allows it to or the caterpillar to transform into the butterfly is Sami, is the light energy. But at the same time, what is that creature physically experiencing inside of that cocoon is a lot of darkness. So like the darkness is a very transformative power, and within the darkness there is a lot of light. It is light itself, just more dense, more a different vibration of it. But just to talk about the transformative power and how important it is, and how we need destruction. We need destructive energy in our lives, because if nothing was ever destroyed, you wouldn't have room for anything new. So we're, in a way, anytime we have something new come into our lives, there's some kind of destruction that has to happen before that, of some form of energy or some event or something. So it's really fascinating to think about.
Now, the nice thing, though, is that destruction or that change doesn't necessarily have to come in a way that is very chaotic for someone. It can come with ease.
Right.
The more conscious we are, and we see that wave of change coming, that wave of destruction coming, we could ride that wave. We can catch that and like surf it, almost like to surf that wave of energy to create in our life anew based on the energies that are coming through. Oh, look at that cheesy rhyme. I did look up real quick a picture of Shiva. I think I got the right one, just to give people a little visual. That is a picture of Shiva I just got from Canva here and wanted to throw up so you can see how they're dancing around, and gives you kind of a visual for the deity that we're talking about. Very good. Oh, and also, if you're watching, if you have questions, if you have comments, please, we welcome those. You can help direct the flow of energy, direct the conversation with the things that are coming up for you as we're talking. We do have a couple people just checking in. Hello, Megan. Thank you so much for tuning in. We also have Magic Mike in the house, who's also in the Shaman Apprenticeship Program. Thank you so much for being here and offering your contribution. But if anyone has any questions, please absolutely make the comments. The best place to comment is on the YouTube channel. We know we see those for sure. Occasionally, Facebook's funny and the comments don't come through. So if you've been commenting, we are not ignoring you. And that was Casey remembering that he forgot to make it public on his page.
Oh, that too. Let me do that.
Or actually, maybe, you know what? I don't think we're streaming to your personal profile anyway. So
that's good. That's cool. That's fine then. Well, I have this story. Speaking of, because I don't know why I don't know why I popped into that exact moment, but I wanted to tell this story about a dream around kind of like the theme of death that I experienced. It was really potent and powerful. So Hank, I know, already knows this story. I don't know if Willa, if you got the chance to read it in the apprenticeship group I shared about it, but I don't even know if I can call it a dream, but it was this powerful experience that happened while I was asleep, like a dream would, but it was so vivid. It was more of like a parallel reality experience. Anyway, so I don't remember what led up to this, but I found myself in this room. It was a purple room. The walls were made of almost an energy, like a purple energy. And in the room sitting were like my grade school classmates that I haven't seen since basically grade school. And they were facing one of the walls. And the whole situation was so strange, seeing them in adult bodies, but with the faces that I remember from childhood. And everything was so strange about this whole situation that I became lucid, which means, you're aware that you're dreaming while you're in the dream. And so immediately when I do that, most of the time I can kind of start manipulating the environment, or like using telekinesis or flying or doing some kind of fun, interesting thing. But I was trying to manipulate something, or just at least get out of this weird room that I was in. And I couldn't. It was like all of there's just very solid laws of physics that I could not break in that space. And so I spent some time trying to find a way, see if there was an exit to get out of this room or something, and there wasn't. And enough time went by, and everything was so vivid. And I even at a couple of points I tried to wake myself up and couldn't. So I started to ask questions of these classmates that were sitting in this room. And they kind of turned toward me, and I could see their eyes had this like red, like paint or something in them. And they had the energy of almost like these gods of destruction, I want to say. It's what it felt like. But they would answer in a very omniscient, kind of like all-knowing, like God energy way. And all of a sudden it clicked, and I realized, I think I know what's happening. So I asked one of them, am I dead? Did I die? Am I dead right now? And all of them in the room turned to me at the same time as soon as I asked that question, were staring at me just with, like, really intently. And And it was really strange. And then they started to ask me questions. They were like, well, what is death? What does death mean to you? Who are you? Who are you really? And if I gave an answer that like wasn't the one I was supposed to give, they'd get more intense about their energy, until the point where I was trying to like slap and wake myself up. I couldn't wake out of it. I was there for what seemed like hours. And I concluded, I kind of broke down on the ground, collapsed, and I was crying at one point. And I'm like, I'm dead. I know I died. Like, this is some kind of weird purgatory experience, and I'm just dead right now. And then everything got really intense, and then everything kind of spiraled out of control, and there was blackness. Just I was floating in a void as consciousness. And then I was woken up in a hospital bed with a woman shaking me, and she said, you had an accident. You've been in a coma for like 20 something days. And we use this really dangerous drug to try and wake you up, but it's not going to last for very long. Do you want us to try and perform this really dangerous surgery that could save your life? Or do you want us to just let you go? If you choose the surgery, you're going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And if you don't survive, then your family's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. Like, do you want us to try the surgery? And I just remember like kind of really momentarily weighing the two options of like just leaving and then or going back to Earth. And I was like, I want to live. She was like, you're sure? I'm like, yes, save me. And then I went black, came back again, and my head was all bound up in like bandages and things and in this device. And there was this doctor with a smile over me, and he said, the surgery was a success. You can rest easy. Like everything's going to be fine, but you're going to need time to rest. And then I don't remember what happened after that, but it was flash forward like maybe like years down the road. And I was like just running, like frolicking through this forest with a couple of friends. And I was just looking around at everything, and I said, do you guys not see how beautiful this world is that we live in? Like this forest, the air, everything, the light, the sounds, the smells, it's all so incredible and magical and beautiful. And the fact that I chose to be here for this is like the best thing ever. And that was the end of that dream. But man, was that powerful. Talk about like themes of death and like choice, and oh my gosh, that was really intense. And Willow, I know you're kind of you have experience with dream interpretation, don't you?
Yeah.
Maybe you can. What are your insights on that experience?
Art therapy work. My thesis was about dream interpretation. I studied a lot of the Carl Jung technique. When you were talking about how, you woke up in this hospital and they said, well, do you want us to do this surgery where you'll be in debt so you can live, or do you want us to just let you go? I feel like that experience for you is kind of like your psyche is telling you that you have a choice. You can choose. You can choose to have great growth, but at the expense of great struggle. Is it worth it to go through great struggle to have the greatest growth? Absolutely. And everything is, everything that comes into form of manifestation, it comes from the void of all creation. Everything is born from the darkness. Everything is born from the quiet. And that's why it's important to sit in your stillness. Sit in your tioa. It's a Cherokee word that means your inner space, your stillness. So as you're observing, be in your stillness, things are being born. And actually at the time when it seems like nothing's happening, it seems like there's just stillness. That's actually when the powers of birth and transformation are most active. And that brings up to me the idea of faith, because faith is saying, I believe in all the blessings that are all meant for me and all this world that are already born. All the blessings for all of me, all of the world, they're already born in the void of all creation. And, just like you have a cup of coffee, everything that you manifest, there is first an idea that spurred you to manifest that. So you thought about coffee, you got excited about it, you like the taste or whatever, and then you get it. But before you're holding that cup of coffee in your hand, do you have faith that, you will be able to get that? Do you have faith of what do you see on the horizon for you, knowing that it is for you, although it's just not in your hand yet?
Very cool. I like that. Yeah. And an interesting, I've brought this point up before, but the same thing, sometimes we think, I'd mentioned this to, I think, Hank the other day, but it seems to me sometimes when I'm actively working with law of attraction and manifestation, I can expend a lot of seeming effort to kind of try and like put out these waves of creation and intent and bring something about. But then often in the moments where it's just a passing thought of, you'd be like, oh, it'd be nice if that happened. And then I just kind of forget about it. Then the thing just shows up like instantly and really easily. But it wasn't just that passing thought, that the manifestation of that thing had been from before I was ever born. The universe had been conspiring to bring that about. And I just kind of got out of the way for that thing to show up. And because I didn't have all the mental resistance around like it needing to happen a certain way, and just kind of had the passing thought, that was why it came so easily. So very cool.
No, your story kind of brings up one of the things that we had on our little checklist, like the question, are death and endings illusions? Like if you had died in that dream, or if you were in that coma state, was what you were perceiving, was that just your point of view of what the beginning of the afterlife would be like? And this resistant, was that just your projection of how you thought things would be processed once you were passing away? Interesting thought. But about our death and endings illusions, what's your thoughts on that, Willow? Like when someone does die, well, this whole world is really an illusion, and the act of death is really just, Neil Donald Walsh calls it the continuation day. It's the end of one form of consciousness and a rebirth or a continuation of that consciousness into a new form.
So there is a river of all creation, and on the river of all creation there is a canoe, and this canoe is constantly traveling from life to death over and over, and when I think of death, I think of that river, and I think of that boat on that river. It's constantly traveling between life and death. Are life and death, much like light and dark, actually part of each other, needing each other to exist?
Absolutely, part of the little duality. And that, of course, when you use that canoe analogy, it makes me think of a song that probably everybody remembers from a kid, row, row, row your boat. And of course, the last verse of that is life is but a dream.
Oh, wow. I never made that connection before.
Yeah.
Well, that would be cool. Yeah. Interesting.
Our death and I think that, death is an opportunity for us to recycle the energy of the situation or the experience. Take the energy that's there, kind of clear it, and recycle it to be put towards a better use.
Absolutely. And I have to think, Casey, if you would have made a different choice and you said, no, let me go, and you would have chosen death, would that have been any righter or wronger, really? It's just a choice, but the space that you're holding, because I don't get the sense that you would have been afraid of death or anything like that. No. But it's just like, it kind of reminds me, if you know Ryan Dean, who's a dear friend of mine, he had a near-death experience, and he was like in that space of oneness. He like flatlined for a good, I forget how many minutes, but they actually had called the time of death, and they were starting to unplug him from all the machines. And one of the interns, when they were undoing the IV, they squeezed it as hard as they could in hopes that his blood pressure would go up enough just for the defibrillator to fire one more time. And it did. And he ends up waking up, sitting up on this bed where everybody thought he was dead. And all he hears, the first thing he remembers is just laughing. He was told later that when he woke up, he said, everybody's having a party and nobody invited me. and he came back, but later on in some meditative work, he had an experience of what all that was about, and he remembered that, wow, I was in touch with all this oneness, seeing the unlimited possibilities of the universe. And then he thought, and I left all that to come here. I left all that to come here and have this experience. It must be pretty important. And that was what anchored him to come back to this reality and continue on with this life and have that growth transformation. But it wouldn't have been any wrong decision for him to move on. But that's another little story of these like little life and death moments where we realize that the work that we have to do here, even if we don't understand it or it seems tough, difficult, whatever the case, it's very potent work for us to know ourselves as a divine infinite being, because in the duality, you have the apparent opposite of who you really are. And it allows you to be in the world, but not of it, and to actualize and manifest divinity on the physical plane. That's kind of my take on it anyway. But I love Ryan's story. We got to get him to do it on a stream one day and really go into the whole thing, because the whole story is just amazing. That was the Cliff Notes version of it.
Oh, I've heard the full version of it, and it's very wild. It's a potent story. But I had to share. It was funny. Speaking of like his death, the end. I'll never forget. Back when I was in, I think it was early or mid high school, or maybe even before that. But I went from being raised as like hardcore Catholic Christian, and then I went to like complete atheist. And if you had any views around spirituality or like any spiritual beliefs, then like you're an idiot, and I'll prove why with science. And a thing I used to say all the time was that the only reason people have like spirituality and religion is that humans can't accept the fact that they're going to die and just stop existing and going into blank, like nothingness after their death. And it was during my initial awakening where I had a near-death experience, and I was in this just void space. So there was like nothing there, but I was just kind of like floating in it. And I asked, that was the thing that was, that I was so core to the things I'd been thinking about before that. And I was like, is there just nothing after this? Like, there's just nothing after this, right? And then I got from this, like, just the power and the vastness of the energy behind it was like that of some magnificent God hit me with like this no. And then I was literally like shoved by that back through all these like layers of reality and into my body, where I came back like to life. And but it's funny because then fast forward after I had explored and had my awakening experience, processed all that stuff, there was a lot of time where I spent all this time kind of like I would journey. I would do shamanic journeying, so exit the body and travel through the realms of spirit. And I have a very rich experience in the realms of spirit. Like my guides and I have gone on so many adventures, and they've showed me the memories of where I've come from and what I've done. And just the adventures I've had in shamanic journeys in this life have been so incredible and beautiful. There was a time when it was like a bit of escapism for me, and I always would, like, I'd come back from maybe like a hour-long journey. And I'm like, man, now I got to be here in this world, man. Like, there's so much incredible stuff happening out there in spirit. Like, why can't I just be there and adventure and do that full time?
Well, you've been doing that for eternity. What's the fun of that? This is where it's at, because you forget everything that you are.
Yeah. And I did. And it's funny you bring that up, because at a certain point, I started to question, well, why did I? Like, why do so many, my case is different, but why do other beings come here, like willingly? Why would anyone willingly come to this planet and be incarnate in a physical body when they're an infinite spirit? And that's a huge draw of this planet, is that when we step into the incarnation grid and we're born, we have this experience of like our memory being temporarily wiped clean or blocked, so that it's almost as if we're experiencing reality for the first time. So imagine a being that is as old as time itself, right? And you've seen everything, experienced everything, and then someone comes along and they're like, hey, do you want to take a ride on this planet where you can have an experience as if everything is new, completely new for the first time? You're like, dude, sign me up. and
that was
so
me. The grid of the earth, I was like, whoa, I'm coming to the wrong place. Take me back.
But especially in recent years, since I'd gotten out more, really when I started to travel, like the national parks of this country in particular, and like experience the vast open spaces of the desert and the forest and the mountains, I started to more and more fall in love with all the beauty. And I realized that sometimes, if you're kind of like locked up in a room and like focused on social media and all that stuff all day long, reality can kind of seem really bleak and a little bit miserable. But as soon as you step out and experience the real world, especially the natural world, and like the forests and the hills and the mountains, you realize that, oh my gosh, is there some powerful beauty and magic on this planet to be experienced. And then, more so than that, I started to really connect to my fellow human beings and realize that, like, interacting with this wide range of people with so many different backgrounds and experiences is so incredibly amazing, and to have these deep connections is so special. Not that you can't have all these experiences in spirit, which you absolutely can, but the way that they're experienced here on this planet is just also very unique and wonderful.
And just for fun,
That's
I posted,
true.
there's an old British comedy sit called Human Holiday. Won't talk about it too much, don't want to ruin any surprises, but I posted a link to it. Based on our conversation, if you like this, you're going to have a very unique appreciation for this old British comedy skit that's on YouTube now.
So I want to talk a little bit about that escapism you were talking about. And I wanted to tell a story. So first art therapy class, the art therapy teacher comes and she says, we're going to do an exercise. We're going to, everybody's going to draw themselves in the rain, and then we're going to talk about it. So I draw myself in the rain. What I do is I draw the rain all around me, and I draw a UFO on top of me with like the beam coming down. And so the rain is not inside the beam. So I'm just under this beam, like, ha ha ha, and the rain's all around me. And I was thinking, like, oh yeah, I'm smart, like I'm different than everyone else. The rain's not touching me, And then when I came up to the art therapist and she looked at it and she said, well, what does this mean? And I said, I want them to take me. And she just looked at it and she's like, that's escapism. Like, nobody, they're not going to come take you. Then it brings up another question to me. What does it mean? What happens to someone when they become numb to all the death and suffering in their life? What happens when you become numb to that?
I think that's when people are checking out, where people are on autopilot when they see those things and they feel powerless. Like it's a space of victimization, really. Like when life is happening to you instead of through you, and you feel powerless to change anything, people will tend to medicate their awareness of those things. And that's also where a lot of disease comes from, because what you, the being, are aware of and are not willing to acknowledge, the body can acknowledge for you. So though we may be numbed out to our awareness, our experience around that might manifest. So I think it's real important when the things like that to really allow yourself to know that you know, and then ask the question, well, is this really scary? Or is this awareness really something that I can take and use to create something different in my life and something new, and it's not to be feared, but almost something to be excited about. So what you fear becomes feeling excited and ready, because it's just a new opportunity. But the ego freaks out because, of course, it doesn't see those possibilities. It only knows past data, and it freaks out when it looks at things like that.
I truly believe that you can be empowered by everything. You can be empowered by everything. So is there merit to experiencing that victimhood? Is there merit to experiencing that checking out? Does it make our ability to feel success and power when we do rise more strong?
Absolutely. I think that there's no wrong experience, quote unquote, if you're in a place of victimhood. That is just going back to like Casey's thing about you need this in order to experience that. In the absence of that which you are not, that which you are is not. So without being the victim, you can't possibly be the victor and really know what that is, because that's the whole point of all this, really, as source is all there is, all at once in the ever-present moment of now. It can't know anything experientially. Hence, we have duality, where we have the apparent opposites, even though it's all the same thing. But we can have a game of pretend that we're less than what we are. And then it gives context to all these amazing things that we have the ability to experience.
Yeah. And I think that when we start to disconnect and make ourselves numb to any aspect of reality, whether that's like the death and suffering or like the joy or whatever you're cutting yourself off from, then you're doing only yourself really a big disservice. Because as infinite consciousness, you are everything that ever was or ever will be. You're here in this moment right now having this experience because that is something that you chose for yourself to experience fully as an individual experience here in the now. And in that way, like, even the death and the suffering can be really beautiful in a way. Maybe not now. Maybe when you're going through a lot of suffering and all of that, like in the moment you hate it and you just want out of it. But
Hindsight's 2020, right?
and it may not even be in this lifetime, right? In the whole life, if some traumatic experience or some death or something, some part of you, you may really resent that your whole entire life. But then when you pass on and you are that infinite being, and you may look back and you're like, wow, that was special, and that gives you so much more appreciation for the other things. But I was just kind of had the thought of, as we're talking about this and talking about the experience of death and dying and regeneration and all of that, knowing that death is not an end, for myself, at least, and maybe you guys share this experience, but I am extremely fascinated by like what the experience of death is like. And I have some memory from transitioning from life to life of like what the dying process is like, but for a large portion of it is kind of blocked from my memory. And so like there's a part of me that whenever that time comes in my life, whether it's tomorrow or 80 years from now, whenever that comes, like I really think it's going to be an incredibly beautiful, powerful experience. The dying process.
Until you wake up in that purple room with those beings. Like, what happened? What happened?
Oh no, this place again! Dang it! Have I been here the whole time?
One thing that comes to
So
mind as we talk about that too. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Willa.
can death be an opportunity to open the door for a second chance, or even a new opportunity?
Second chances and new opportunities. Absolutely. Because how many people have had, like Ryan's case, he had a near-death experience, and up until that point, he was an engineering vegan a-hole, really. I'm saying that with the most love for you, Ryan, if you're watching. But when he had that shift and he touched in with that, and he really started to embrace some of these other things in his life took on a whole new direction and a whole new set of meetings and things of that nature. And he has like empathic healings now, and he works with empaths, and he has all these rich things in his life that he probably never would have looked at had he not had that near-death experience. So, and he had a second close call when he was at a place where he was working that wasn't healthy for him, and he ended up having to go to the emergency room, and he asked his guides, what's up with that? They said, well, inspiration didn't seem to be working, so we thought respiration would do the trick. And so oftentimes we have these inspirations to consciously choose things in a much easier way, but when you don't wake up and you don't hear that inner call of the soul, then life can get pretty intense and make you very uncomfortable. To bring you back to Willa's original point with the Shiva fire, sometimes we're forced to jump into that fire of change from whatever circumstances we created subconsciously in our life, begging and pleading with the universe to get back on track with who we came to really be. And I think they're amazing second chances. Sometimes they're not fun, at least not in the moment. But in the end, when we look back, it's like, holy cow, how much richer my life is. Like, I've been in recovery from alcohol addiction for over 12 years now. And I wouldn't trade all the misery, quote unquote, that I was experiencing in the time that I was drinking, because all of that gave me such an amazing appreciation for where I am now, which I wouldn't have the same viewpoint had that all not happened. But I had my second chance when I decided to actually get on track. And I think everybody has that. You don't have to die to get it. We can choose that second chance on our own without having the universe to smack us upside the head too hard.
Yeah, the universe will choose for us, if we don't
I can relate
listen.
to that smacking.
Yeah.
Being from a Zen Buddhist background, I've experienced the whack on the head more times than I can even tell you.
Oh,
I
literally
believe
too.
that my soul contract for this life, I basically agreed to have the hardest life possible, and maybe that's why I thrive so much by throwing myself in the Shiva fire over and over and over again. It's like I build a life and then it all burns down, and then I build a new life and it's better, and then it all burns down, and then I build it again and it burns down again, and then it's better again and again. There's a Zen koan that I hold very dear. It's the story about the best horse and the worst horse. So they say that the worst horse is the best horse. So there's 4 horses. The first horse, he is doing the training exercises. He nails every one the first time. He doesn't get burned with the hot coal at all. The second horse, he has a little bit of trouble, but for the most part, he gets all the training exercises the first couple times. He doesn't get hit with the coal too much. The third one, he gets hit with the coal a lot more. He gets in trouble. He can't learn it as fast. But the fourth horse, he gets hit with coal so much, and he keeps trying over and over again, and he keeps getting it wrong, and he keeps getting it wrong, and keeps getting it wrong. And then he finally gets it right, and then he's more skilled than all the others. It's like, which horse do you think really received the lesson? The one that had the easiest time or the one that had the hardest time? I think it's the one that had the hardest time, because they had to go through the most to receive that lesson.
I think there's different layers we could dive into with that, but I agree over on the way presented. I 100% agree with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the same time,
when I'm going,
I can feel the other levels where you're wanting to go with that, and know that like you don't have to go through any kind of like suffering or trial, and things can come with great ease, real powerful realizations, skills, and experiences. But sometimes on some level, like some people do have to go through. Some people do have to suffer a lot before they reach that.
What if it's all the same horse?
Right.
Yeah, it's all the same. I can relate to that. I feel like I've been all the horses.
Right. And then you come back to the hardest one because, yeah, it might have hurt a little bit, but it was the most fun.
Yeah. There's a saying that I say a lot when I'm going through really hard times. I say, it's sun shining outside, I come out my front door dancing. It's raining outside, I come out my front door dancing. And what merit is there to fully tasting all the experiences of life, all the highs and lows of human capacity. When you cry, taste your left tear on your left cheek, and when you cry, taste your right tear. Right. Just like feasting on all the good and bad of life and taking it all as beauty and empowerment.
And really, another thing to keep in mind is if you come into a life that has easy street, let's call it, and you're never having to push through things, you might just settle in life. And what if you go through autopilot for the whole time and there's less conscious choice in the life in totality? It's when we are uncomfortable that we seek to consciously grow. When we are comfortable, and everybody can probably relate to this, if something's working in your life, how often do you look to change it? You leave it the status quo. You're settling, and we forget then that we can ask the universe for more. We can ask the universe for a different possibility or a greater possibility. But when you have something that doesn't work for you in your life, how quickly are we looking to change that? And so that horse that kept getting the coal or whatever the analogy was, they have a greater potential appreciation for making conscious choices and knowing that there's cause and effect. And as they go to create, they might have a much greater potential to create with that level of consciousness because of the contrast that they had through their experience.
Absolutely. For the rock to be revealing the diamond, it has to be hammered. And that's how we all are. We're all like that rock coal. It has to be hammered to reveal the diamond.
Ooh, I love your analogies. I'm really big with analogies, if you didn't know. That and acronyms. I have the best cheesy acronyms for almost anything.
No, and that goes. I've heard a lot of spiritual teachers talk, and it seems to be pretty true in most of the people that I've connected with and really gotten to hear their stories. Is that exactly like what you said? The suffering of the world is here to wake us up, and in fact, the world isn't here to make us happy and for everything to be bright and fun. But the world is here to wake us up, and that was what the Buddha taught. And then in his first ever Dharma talk, his first ever time he got in front of people to really talk, that's all he talked about was suffering. And I know in my experience and other people's experience, it was through this immense deep suffering, or even to the point of either an actual near-death experience, or some people be so much suffering that they would want to die. Through all of that darkness opens the opportunity where we truly look to find out, okay, what's really going on here? What else is there? And then in that's when we start to search for the light. And then when we find it, like, man, is it beautiful. But for people who maybe have never had that much suffering, maybe they're fine, content having their experience, and that's perfect and wonderful. But some of us are here to really wake from the illusion and help other people to do that. And so for a lot of us, it seemed like that suffering and that darkness was necessary for us to get to this point. So there's really, and so it's not a bad thing. In fact, it might be the most beautiful thing in your life. Even if you're going through suffering right now, you don't understand why. Maybe it's here to wake you up, and maybe that will turn into the most beautiful thing you've ever experienced.
There's a saying in AA. They say that spirit or religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell, and spirituality is for people who have been there, because it's the people who have gone through what their perception of suffering and hell is that have this awakening that they really are seeking that opposite, and they're looking to have a full experience with it. I just want to go through a couple of the comments just to acknowledge the people that have commented. And if you have any comments, questions, please continue to post this. We have Faith that was just saying, I wonder if the Earth experience shows us how far we have advanced or our core being if you take away the knowledge. And then we have, this is kind of a question based on an experience. I'll put this one up last to see if anybody has a comment on it. But another one from Faith, learning how to push through makes you strong, and remembering you have the power makes you appreciative. Absolutely. And then the other thing, Megan was saying, what a wonderful discussion. Thank you. You're welcome very much. I'm so glad that you are tuning in. And now that someone was sharing kind of a near-death experience that they had from LaRonda Aldridge. I have had 2 near-death experiences. 2 years old, I fell into a charcoal pit. Then my lungs. Is there a reason? Well, that would be, I would challenge you to, instead of asking a question, why or is there a reason, the question would be, at least for me, because you guys know I'm big on questions, is what from this experience could I take and shift into a greater possibility? Because instead of defining ourselves by our suffering, what if we are able to use those as springboards into possibility? And these things, maybe having that fear at 2 years old, just instilled different character traits that are going to be valuable to you right now to offer to your fellow human being to help be in the world but not of it. And I'm sure that a coal pit probably had a lot of dust and things, so both could be lung related. So what if it's about the ability to receive from the universe? Like little things where there's blocks for receiving. That's kind of what comes to mind. But Will is our resident interpreter. If there's anything that, she actually said, I think you answered, I'm on my spiritual path. Yep. Go ahead.
When I think about the lungs, I think about grief. But one of the things that inspired me to think about was that, bad things happen in life. It's part of the natural order. And when bad things happen to you, it's not always because you did something to cause it. You don't have to play the game of karma. You can say, I'm not playing karma. Sometimes bad things are going to happen and it's not your fault. It's just the natural order.
When we say bad, we're saying it in air quotes. Bad and good, all relative to point of view and perception. What one man's pain is another man's pleasure and vice versa. So it's all a matter of reference point. And that's why I love the tradition that all 3 of us are apprenticing, the Paco tradition of Peru. We have the concept called Hucha and Sami, which just means heavy and light. And based on where you're at, does one particular thing feel light to you or heavy to you? It's not a right or wrong. It's just based on where you're at. How does it feel? And if you can start to choose the things that feel light, then that's what you bring into your life. You have that good orderly direction to start allowing things that are going to increase that feeling of lightness in your life, or not. Some people like the heavy, and there's nothing wrong with that either.
Well, I may be hopping off here in just a second. I just wanted to mention that I may have to go in just a moment.
Uh-oh. Casey, where are you going? We want to know.
Well, I gotta go to the bathroom really bad.
Well, we could just take you off the stream temporarily. You could go and come back.
Yeah, that's true.
No. Now I wish I didn't ask. TMI, Casey. I thought it was going to be some fun thing.
I'm sorry. Well,
I wanted to ask you, 2 minutes left. Would you like to do a light language transmission with me about the subject?
Oh, yeah, sure. I can do that.
Transmission.
Yeah.
Through the medicine of sound.
So for people who aren't familiar, I think that'd be a cool way to end it. But for people who aren't familiar, like light language is a language that comes out. Well, it can be manifested in different ways. But when we're talking about either talking or singing, it is like a language that comes through that carries a lot of powerful energy, but it's channeled directly from spirit. So some people, when I sing in light language, they're like, oh, like that sounds like Norse, or some people are like, oh, that sounds like Celtic, or it sounds like this, or Roman, or like whatever it sounds like. But in truth, it's not any language of earth. It comes through directly from spirit, and the languages, to my understanding, predate any human language. But through that, there are really powerful energetic codes that can come and activate different things in our DNA and do all kinds of really powerful things. So if you're open to receiving, when you hear light language, it's like a transmission of far more information than could ever be explained through our human language. So if you're open to receiving it, it can be really, really powerful.
Very cool.
Yeah, transmissions are a way to receive energy and healing beyond the mind.
Yes.
So I'm really glad that you like to end the conversation this way. I'm going to go ahead and play the drum. I'll back you up.
Okay, very cool.
We'll go.
All right. Umare vana sare areina. Umara se athira. Surnai urgamai veari nuri nuransa. Urmei ke aru sine ariana. Ume ivai ure uthaini. Saru karu vaide umari uriari. Surna irava irana scurvo shorona. Iveia runda ke aru ithe. Bora isheava Ikea nuria.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I just moved the camera to the mesa. I thought it was a nice thing people could look at while you were doing the little light language transmission. But now you could tell I was like totally not in the forest. the magic has been broken.
You broke the fourth wall. Oh,
yeah,
no.
So I'll go to the autumn string, or maybe since we're talking about death, I'll do a cemetery. How about that?
Very beautiful. Well, this is wonderful, guys. Thank you. Oh, Willow disappeared. Is she black for you? The screen.
Yeah, she's black for me. Poof, she just became renewed. We don't know what her new form will be, but I'm sure it will be beautiful.
There she is. She's sideways.
Now she's sideways. Everybody, hi, Willow. No, but that was really a good note to end on.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was really magical. This was a beautiful. Oh, what was that?
I look forward to storytelling and transmissions and conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this was great. We'll have to have you on again very soon. This was wonderful.
Yep, and we'll be back to streaming a lot more as we settle into the winter months, because Casey won't be out in the woods hiking all the time, and I'll be less busy, and so we'll be back.
And I wanted to bring that up real quick. We had been doing a weekly live stream healing session, which I think we haven't done in like 3 or 4 weeks, and we won't be doing it this week because I'm going out of town for Thanksgiving.
Oh, good, because I was going to tell you I couldn't do it either, so that works out great.
Okay. Well, I'm glad anyway, so but those will be returning, and so subscribe to the channel Stir Crazy Shamans for more of this, as well as really incredible magical group healing sessions that we do. They will be returning probably not this week, but next week. So.
Yep, and just a quick shout out, if you want to connect with Willow, her website is sonicalchemy.wordpress.com. If you want to connect with Casey, you can do so at emergenceofbeing.com. Both Casey and I are there, but you could also go to shamanswayhealing.com. And then my website, of course, is thesonicshaman.com. And for those of you who haven't subscribed to my channel, The Sonic Shaman, I am doing a daily thing called the Coffee Connect. There's already several episodes, and people are responding very well, but it's all about the inspiration of the day and what can we use that inspiration for to create new possibilities to heal. And you never know what's going to come up. Today I did a little ceremony and an attunement, so it's a really fun time, and that's usually around 9 o'clock in the morning, give or take. You got to subscribe if you want to make sure you don't miss it, because I never know for sure when I'm going to go on.
And if you enjoyed,
it's easier to connect with me through Sonic Alchemy on Facebook.com/Sonic Sound Alchemy until I get my website fixed up. But I'm looking forward to streaming some storytelling sound transmissions with you and Casey.
Yeah,
it's going to be great. I wonder if we can even come to the center. We can get the big green screen set up, and we can look like we're doing a channeling from space or something like that. That would be fun.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And one last note: if anyone watching really enjoyed this, please go to the channel. There is a playlist where we have all kinds for the episodes where we have guests on, and we've had all kinds of incredible people on here. So check out that playlist, and if you're still feeling inspired to, open up to more of this interesting stuff that we tend to talk about, then check that playlist out. If not, I like to pick an episode that kind of resonates with just by the title. Oh, well, that kind of sounds interesting. I find whenever I'm listening to a spiritual teacher or a channel with a talk show or something, whenever I pick the one that just kind of catches my eye, it's always what I needed to hear. So that's a cool way to check out some of the stuff too.
One of my personal favorites is the one we did on Mother's Day, where I did the soul retrieval for being cut from the mother. That's always been one of my favorites. So if you can't think of anywhere else to start with the Mother's Day episode. That's really fun. All right, but thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Willow, for coming on and having this amazing conversation with us, and we look forward to having another one very soon.
Yes, a Nike, everyone.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.